The North Sea was shrouded in a veil of gray mist, creating an almost reverent stillness. Yet, in the frigid depth below, something was stirring. The year was 1914, the Great War's inaugural winter, and the silent predators of the deep were awakening. The world still envisioned warfare as lines of infantry marching to the beat of drums or battleships exchanging thunderous volleys. But beneath the waves, a new, stealthy weapon lay in wait. Among those shaping this clandestine battleground was Otto Weiss, a young German officer serving aboard the U-19, one of Germany's early yet formidable submarines. The U-19 was a claustrophobic cage of metal, its air thick with the mingled scent of oil, iron, and the exhalations of 26 men who had learned to navigate its narrow confines in near silence. To outsiders, it might have felt like a submerged coffin, but to Otto, it had become a peculiar kind of home. He had grown accustomed to the constant hum of machinery, the distant groans of pressure against the steel hull, and the soft, yellow glow of lamps that swayed gently with the ocean's movements. Life aboard a submarine demanded absolute stillness, but beneath that tranquility lay a constant awareness. Each man knew that a single misstep could transform their iron vessel into a watery grave. During quiet moments, Otto often found himself near the periscope well, listening to the rhythmic pulse of the engines as he jotted down fleeting thoughts in a leather-bound notebook. These were not orders nor strategic plans, but personal reflections. He wrote of how silence transformed underwater, becoming thick and heavy, as if the ocean itself were listening to every heartbeat. He also wrote of fear, though he never openly confessed to it. Fear on a submarine was a silent burden carried by all, an invisible companion. Their captain, Captain Lieutenant Schwieger, possessed a quiet confidence that spoke of a deep understanding of the sea's volatile nature. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, the crew listened intently. He had once remarked, "A submarine is not a ship. It is a shadow, and shadows do not boast. They watch, they wait, and strike only when the enemy is least prepared." These words resonated with Otto, shaping his perspective on the mission ahead. The U-19's assignment that winter was deceptively simple: patrol the waters around the British Isles and disrupt enemy supply lines. Merchant ships, coal carriers, and troop transports were all considered fair targets. But simple was relative. Operating unseen in waters teeming with destroyers demanded not only skill, but a particular brand of quiet courage. The men on board moved with controlled precision during dives, keenly aware of how sound traveled further beneath the surface. A dropped tool, a raised voice, or even a careless shift in weight could betray their presence to hydrophones above. One frigid morning, as the submarine ascended to periscope depth, Otto stood beside the captain as the polished metal cylinder rose slowly, breaking through the ocean's surface into the open air. The captain rotated the view, carefully scanning the horizon. Otto held his breath, not out of fear, but out of habit. Each surfacing felt like forcing an eyelid open against the blinding light, exposing themselves to a world that might already be hunting them. "Smoke on the horizon," Schwieger murmured. Otto felt a subtle ripple of tension course through him, though his face remained impassive. Smoke meant a ship, and a ship meant opportunity, or peril. The crew moved silently as the word spread through the narrow corridors. Men adjusted torpedo mechanisms, checked gauges, and prepared the vessel for silent pursuit. The U-19 angled itself carefully, maintaining sufficient distance to remain hidden beneath the choppy surface. Otto watched as the captain once again raised the periscope, the faint image of a distant freighter appearing like a phantom in the glass. "It is alone," the captain observed. Slow, heavy, and unaware. These were the moments Otto found strangely contradictory. The hunter's thrill was undeniable. Anyone who denied was a liar, but was accompanied by a profound, almost solemn weight. The men on that ship were not soldiers. They were sailors, laborers, ordinary men thrust into extraordinary danger because the world had succumbed to war. Yet, orders were orders, and the U-19's purpose was clear. Otto felt the submarine shift subtly as Schwieger gave command to close the distance. The engine hummed at a lower frequency, its vibrations softer, more cautious. Through the hull, Otto could sense the very pulse of the sea. Above them, the freighter plowed through the waves, oblivious to the death that moved silently in its shadow. The torpedo room was a study in tense silence as the weapon was loaded, its metal casing cold and slick under the lamplight. Otto watched the crew perform their tasks with practiced efficiency. Every movement was deliberate, every breath measured. When the captain's voice echoed to the corridor with the steady authority of ritual, torpedo ready, the stillness deepened. At the command, the torpedo was released with a smooth, almost gentle push. Unlike the explosions that would follow, the launch was quiet, subtle enough that the enemy ship above would hear nothing but the familiar wash of waves. Otto imagined the torpedo gliding like a silver fish toward its target, guided not by instinct, but by human intent. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The ocean seemed to hold its breath with them. Then came the distant thud, a heavy, muffled impact, followed by the deep rumble of detonation. Otto felt the vibration travel through the water, into the hull, and into his chest. The freighter silhouette wavered in the periscope's lens as flames erupted in a sudden orange bloom. Men scrambled on the deck above, tiny figures silhouetted against the inferno. Some leapt into lifeboats. Others clung desperately to the rails. Otto swallowed hard. The victory they had trained for tasted different when witnessed up close. The ocean did not conceal human suffering. It amplified it. The captain lowered the periscope and inhaled slowly. His face betrayed no triumph, only a somber acceptance. "We move on," he said quietly. "The sea keeps no memories, but men do." As the U-19 submerged deeper into the cold, all-consuming darkness, Otto returned his notebook. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what he had witnessed. He wrote of the fire on the horizon, how strangely beautiful it appeared against the winter sky. He wrote of the men scrambling for safety, their cries lost beneath the waves. And he wrote of the silence that followed, how it settled over the submarine like a shroud, heavy yet familiar. Life aboard continued. The engines resumed their steady rhythm. The lamps swayed gently with the currents, and U-19 drifted to the deep like a steel specter. Yet for Otto, something had shifted. He felt the first stirrings of a question he could not yet articulate, a question that would haunt him throughout the war, through every patrol, every torpedo launch, every night spent in the dim belly of the submarine. A question about duty, about humanity, and about the price of silent warfare. And though he did not yet realize it, the days ahead would test those questions in ways that transcended the quiet dread of the deep. The winter of 1915 arrived with a bitter intensity, sharper than the year before. The U-19 had patrolled countless miles, lurking beneath waves that threatened to crush a man's very spirit. Otto had grown accustomed to the rhythms of underwater existence, the calculated breaths, the hushed conversations, the small rituals that served as reminders of their continued existence. Yet, as the war intensified, he began to feel the weight of each mission more profoundly. Each ship sunk, each explosion witnessed through the periscope, etched itself into his memory with a precision that surpassed any ledger or official report. One evening, as the sun dipped behind a clouded horizon, transforming the surface of the North Sea into a shimmering expanse of molten silver, the U-19 received intelligence of a convoy passing through the Heligoland Bight. A mix of supply vessels, some lightly escorted, others heavily guarded, were making their way towards Britain. The tension aboard the submarine subtly heightened, like the tightening of a bowstring. Every crew member understood that the opportunity for success carried an equal risk of failure. A single error could spell destruction, not only for the convoy, but for themselves. Otto found himself once again stationed at the periscope, the familiar metal tube rising slowly through the frigid waves. He noted the slight tremor in the water, the distant silhouettes of ships blurred by the haze. Each shadow hinted at a story, of commerce, of interrupted lives, of the invisible hand of war reaching down to claim them. The convoy moved steadily, unaware of the predator lurking below, the cold calculation strategy dictating every move of the U-19. Captain Lieutenant Schwieger moved along the deck silently, reviewing positions and plans with subtle gestures. Otto had learned to interpret these gestures, a slight nod indicating a necessary adjustment, a tilt of the head conveying caution, a soft exhale signaling approval. There was no need for loud commands. The men had become attuned to the language of silence, the unspoken dialogue of shadows and steel. As the submarine glided closer, Otto could feel the tension coiling like a spring within the crew. The torpedo room was a haven of silent preparation, the instruments precise, the mechanisms poised. In the hushed atmosphere of the underwater vessel, the men seemed suspended in a fragile balance between life and death. Otto's thoughts drifted momentarily to the sailors on those distant decks, the families awaiting their return, the ordinary human lives intersecting with his extraordinary duty. He reminded himself that in war, morality often yielded to necessity, yet the heart remembered. The initial target was a lightly escorted freighter, its cargo unknown but potentially vital. The U-19 approached at periscope depth, carefully navigating beneath the hulls of other ships and in the shadows of the waves. Otto's hand rested on the periscope, feeling the vibrations transmitted from the cold metal into his fingertips. Every movement of the convoy above was magnified, every ripple in the water a potential signal. He had learned to listen not just with his ears, but with his entire being, sensing the flow of the sea as an extension of his own awareness. "Torpedo one ready," came the captain's low voice, steady and measured. Otto swallowed the tension that had crystallized like ice in his chest. The launch, when it came, was flawless. The torpedo sliced through the water with silent precision, disappearing into the gray expanse before the crew could fully exhale. Moments later, the distant but unmistakable impact echoed through the sea, a muffled explosion, followed by the brief flicker of flame that pierced the monotony of twilight. Otto observed the ensuing chaos through the periscope. The freighter listing precariously, crew members scrambling, lifeboats being lowered into the cold, indifferent waters. The act was efficient, almost clinical, yet the human element remained painfully visible. The captain remained calm, his expression unreadable. "We continue," Schwieger stated, his voice barely audible above the hum of the engines. "The sea forgets, but men do not." Otto returned to the observation deck as the U-19 maneuvered to intercept the second vessel. This one was different. A troop transport guarded by destroyers, its movements cautious and deliberate. The crew's tension ratcheted tighter, palpable even in the subdued atmosphere of the submarine. Every adjustment, every minute maneuver of the U-19 required precise calculation. Otto could feel the collective heartbeat of the crew synchronizing with the rhythm of the sea, the mechanical pulse of the engines, and the silent anticipation of the hunt. They tracked the transport for hours, navigating meticulously to avoid detection, submerged just beneath the waves, surfacing briefly to check wind and distance. Otto found this strange rhythm comforting, the interplay of tension and patience, the delicate choreography that kept them alive. Yet it was also exhausting both mentally and physically, a relentless test of endurance. The men spoke sparingly. Communication was reduced to gestures and occasional nod. In this environment, words seemed both superfluous and potentially dangerous. Finally, the moment arrived. The U-19 crept into position, and the torpedo mechanisms were armed. Otto felt a familiar mix of adrenaline and solemn responsibility. This was not merely a weapon of steel and propellant. It was a tool of human decision, bearing the weight of countless unseen consequences. The captain signaled the launch. The torpedo streaked through the cold water, silent, deliberate, unstoppable. Otto watched through the periscope as it struck the transport's hull. The impact was immediate, violent, yet strangely contained within the glass frame before his eyes. The destroyers reacted swiftly, their smokestacks belching black plumes as they maneuvered frantically to locate the submarine. Otto felt the first sharp pang of fear in weeks, a reminder that victory was always shadowed by danger. The U-19 dove deeper, engines muted, navigating silently through layers of water and potential threats. The crew worked with quiet efficiency, maintaining composure despite the palpable tension. Otto's thoughts wandered again, reflecting on the strange duality of their existence. Instruments and tactics, strategy and chance, calculated violence and human empathy. How does one reconcile the act of destruction with the life preserved in memory? Otto had no answers, only the awareness that the sea demanded both courage and humility. By nightfall, the convoy was disrupted. Ships were damaged or destroyed. The human cost, though unseen by them, was immense. Otto stood by the periscope once more, watching the last shadows fade into the dark horizon. The cold of the North Sea seemed even more intense now, a stark reminder that the ocean itself was indifferent to the ravages of war. It did not take sides. It merely held the consequences of human actions within its vast, silent depths. Otto wrote again that night, his hands steady, but his thoughts heavy. He wrote of strategy and duty, but also of doubt and introspection. Each patrol left him more acutely aware of the fine line between necessity and morality, between survival and empathy. The war demanded obedience, yet the heart of a man, even submerged beneath layers of steel and water, could not help but witness, remember, and question. And so the days passed aboard the U-19, each one a carefully choreographed dance of silence and observation, a relentless test of skill and conscience. Otto felt the submarine's heartbeat resonate with his own, a metallic pulse mirrored in the tension and rhythms of human lives intertwined with the sea. He had learned that survival required more than precision. It demanded understanding, patience, and a recognition of the fragile humanity that persisted beneath the weight of conflict. The winter continued, long and unforgiving, and the waters of the North Sea would not forgive recklessness. Yet within those frigid depths, the men of the U-19 had discovered a rhythm of life that was as much about endurance as about destruction. Otto understood with a quiet certainty that the lessons of the deep, patience, observation, vigilance would follow him long after the war, shaping the way he would navigate the world above water, where consequences were seen, felt, and endured. The spring of 1916 arrived with a strange mixture of hope and foreboding. The North Sea remained as unforgiving as ever, yet the sunlight piercing to the cold waves hinted at the possibility of new beginnings. Otto had spent months immersed in the silent realm beneath the waves, his mind heavy with memories of destruction, yet strangely attuned to the rhythm of life that persisted both above and below the surface. The U-19 had become more than just a vessel. It was an extension of their collective consciousness, a partner in the delicate dance of war and survival. The mission that day was unlike any Otto had encountered before. Intelligence reports indicated a large convoy transporting crucial military supplies and personnel, heavily guarded by destroyers and cruisers. Engaging such a formidable formation was a risk laden with consequences, but the captain had made the decision to proceed. There was no room for hesitation. The orders were clear, and the men obeyed with silent discipline, each keenly aware that the difference between success and annihilation rested on precision, timing, and the meticulous interpretation of shadows beneath the waves. Otto found himself stationed at the periscope once more, the familiar metal cylinder piercing the restless surface. The convoy materialized first as faint, wavering silhouettes, their outlines obscured by the sea mist and the shifting light. Otto's eyes strained, not just to identify potential threats, but to comprehend the lives moving above them, unaware of the silent hunter navigating below. He felt a profound connection to the palpable tension of the moment, the invisible thread linking predator and prey, metal and flesh, strategy and chance. The U-19 approached with utmost caution, the crew executing each maneuver with fluid precision. Otto's mind flitted between calculation and observation, measuring distances, estimating speeds, and anticipating reactions. The men on board had evolved into experts not only in mechanics and tactics, but also in patience and restraint. In a world dominated by clamor and chaos, they had come to appreciate the value of stillness, the power of quiet. "Torpedo one ready," the captain intoned, his voice calm yet resonant with the weight of his responsibility. Otto felt a familiar tightening in his chest, a confluence of anticipation, and a somber acknowledgement of the human ramifications of their actions. The torpedo was released with smooth inevitability, slicing silently through the water towards the largest freighter. Moments later, a distant explosion reverberated through the sea, a muted shockwave transmitting the impact to the submarine's hull. Through the periscope, Otto observed the freighter shudder violently, flames licking at the deck, crew members scrambling towards lifeboats. The scene was undeniably devastating, yet possessed an unsettling beauty in its symmetry of cause and effect, in a mechanical elegance of the weapon finding its mark. The U-19 did not linger. Schwieger deftly maneuvered the vessel deeper into the cold, murky depths, evading sonar detection and enemy countermeasures. Otto experienced a complex blend of relief and melancholy, the exhilaration of successful strike tempered by the undeniable weight of human suffering. Each patrol left him more deeply aware of the inherent duality of warfare, the necessity of decisive action balanced against the enduring nature of its consequences. Hours passed as the submarines shadowed other vessels in the convoy. Some ships managed to escape unscathed, their crews blissfully unaware of the danger that had passed beneath them. Others had already succumbed to the silent, deadly embrace of torpedoes. Otto observed the subtle choreography of survival, the way destroyers meticulously scanned the waters, the way freighters adjusted their courses, the constant interplay between hunter and hunted. In these interactions, he perceived a peculiar rhythm, a pulse of the sea itself, indifferent yet intimately connected to human endeavor. By late afternoon, the convoy was in disarray. Otto observed the ships separated and regrouped, as crews feverishly assessed damage and struggled to maintain control. The U-19 remained concealed beneath the waves, its steel hull absorbing the reverberations of distant explosions. Otto's thoughts returned repeatedly to the men above, to their fear, their courage, and their resilience. In some ways, he felt a closer kinship with them than with his own crewmates, connected by the invisible thread of shared mortality, by the understanding that life, regardless of where it unfolded, was fragile and fraught with consequence. The captain's voice finally sliced through the hum of the machinery. We move on. Keep vigilant. The sea offers no mercy, and we should extend no respite. Otto returned to his journal, his hand steady but heavy with reflection. He wrote of the relentless tension, of the precision and unwavering patience required to navigate not only the vessel, but also the treacherous moral terrain of silent warfare. He wrote of fear, its subtle but persistent presence, and of the strange exhilaration that arose from living perpetually on the precipice of discovery and disaster. The U-19, he realized, was more than just a weapon. It was a crucible, forging character in the cold, pressurized depths. Night descended over the North Sea, the water gradually darkening to an almost impenetrable black. The U-19 drifted beneath the surface, its engines whispering, its sensors alert, its crew poised in a silent communion of shared awareness. Otto gazed at the dim glow emanating from the instruments and lanterns, at the small but vital gestures exchanged between his comrades, and felt an unfamiliar sensation. A quiet sense of pride mingled with profound humility. They had survived, executed their orders, and navigated the treacherous waters of both sea and conscience. Yet the human cost, invisible beneath the waves, lingered in his mind like a shadow refusing to dissipate. In those long hours, Otto contemplated the lessons of the deep. Survival demanded more than mere skill. It required patience, empathy, and a profound understanding of consequences. He realized that the world above water, with all its clamor and chaos, was merely a reflection of the currents below. Life and death intertwined, often silently, often unnoticed, yet always irrevocable. The U-19 had taught him that observation was just as vital as action, that awareness of the consequences of each decision was a form of discipline as essential as the handling of torpedoes or the calculation of angles. By dawn, the remnants of the convoy had vanished over the horizon, leaving behind only the cold sea and its quiet depths. Otto stood at the periscope one last time, tracing the fading silhouettes of distant masts, the faint smoke lingering from burned-out cargo ships. He reflected on the inherent paradox of their existence. To act decisively while remaining unseen, to wield power with restraint, and to carry the crushing weight of choices that went unnoticed by those most affected. The U-19 was indeed a shadow, yet within that shadow lay the profound lessons of human ingenuity, fear, courage, and responsibility. As the submarine adjusted its course for home, Otto felt the first stirrings of hope. Hope that one day the war would finally come to an end. Hope that the lessons learned beneath the waves, of patience, observation, and respect for life and its consequences, might somehow guide him in the world above. Yet he knew, with unwavering certainty, that the North Sea, like history itself, would not forget, and neither would he. The days ahead promised more missions, more agonizing decisions, more silent confrontations with a heavy burden of action. But for now, in the brief lull before the next patrol, Otto allowed himself a rare moment of quiet reflection. He understood, with a clarity born of experience, that the silent killers of the deep were not merely weapons. They were mirrors, reflecting the complex human condition in steel and water, in shadow and light, in action and consequence. And as the submarine slid to the cold, early morning waves, Otto knew that every journey beneath the North Sea would continue to shape him, carving into his soul an unwavering awareness of life's inherent fragility, of duty's relentless weight, and of the extraordinary intersection of courage and conscience that defined the silent submarine warfare of the Great War.